Foreign interference here in Canada is a massive deal. No, wait, it's not really a big deal. No, hold on a second. It never really happened. No, let me correct myself. It happened, but we shouldn't worry about it. No, it's a tremendously large deal, and we should all pay attention to it. And anyone who isn't paying attention to it is not a good person. You see how that was a little confusing? Well, that's the state of politics here in Canada. Every single party leader is contradicting one another, and Canadians just want to know the truth. Who should we be most angry at? Justin Trudeau? Yeah, of course. Freeland? Of course. Jagmeet Singh? Absolutely. But when it comes to treason, a real problem here in Canada, apparently. Who are we pointing the fingers at? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. We have a couple different updates. We're going to be looking at the polls. We're going to be looking at a recent interview of Justin Trudeau's mistress, Mélanie Joly, and a additional interview of the Green Party leader, Elizabeth May. Fermented wine, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, kind of weird. Elizabeth May came out. She read the report. She said, it's not a big deal. Then she did an additional press conference saying, guys, I said it's not a big deal. Then Jagmeet Singh read the report and said, it's a tremendous deal. And now Elizabeth May has another follow-up. So it's so confusing. And if you are confused, don't worry. I'm also confused. Everyone watching this is going, what the hell's happening in Canada? It's not a good look. It's not a good look. Let's get into the video. So we're going to start off with the polls. The Conservatives have gone down. That's right. 206 seats. I think they were 207. And not too long ago, they were 211. And before that, they were at 220. So they're going down somehow. Bottom line, 178. Top end of 229. Liberals have gone up. If you don't know which way they've gone, if you're keeping track of how many seats they've had versus how many they have now projected, of course, this arrow right here next to the number, if it's pointing down, it means they've gone down. If it's going up, they've gone up. I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence, but just some people actually don't know that. So that's a little telltale sign. Conservatives are still sitting at 99% likely winning in most seats and 99% likely winning a majority government. So everything is looking copacetic on those fronts. But what's not looking copacetic is Trudeau's mistress, Mélanie Joly, who's just contradicting all of the leaders. And then on top of that, Elizabeth May. So let's get into these interviews, shall we?
Minister, good to have you back in studio. Thank you for making the time. It's a pleasure. I wanted to start off on the topic of foreign interference. And in particular, I want to ask you very, very pointedly, are there quote unquote traitors to this country, as Jagmeet Singh put it, in the Liberal caucus?
Listen, when I hear these loaded words, I feel that it's really hurting our democracy. Because fundamentally, foreign interference is a real thing. It's been happening for years. Now it's more of an issue because also of disinformation, misinformation online. But all democracies in the world are facing this. I'm talking about this with my colleagues of different democracies.
Okay, first of all, that's a very weird thing to say. Is foreign interference an issue in Canada? Well, yeah, it is. And who cares, because it's happening to all other countries. So should we be worried about it? No, all countries are under foreign interference. Ipso facto, Canada has nothing to worry about. That's a weird position to take, like almost idiotic, one could say. All my friends are jumping off of bridges, and so wait for me, guys, wait for me. I got short legs. I want to jump off the bridge too. Kind of a weird mentality. I know we've already seen this interview. We're just taking a look at the first couple minutes here to refresh, and then we're going to be taking a look at what Elizabeth May has to say. So just stick with me.
Particularly amongst the G7. And we are the country that is the most forward-leaning on this issue. We're the only country having a public inquiry on this. And the goal is to shed light on the issue and also to find solution. But the goal is also to not make it a partisan issue.
Is that what you're accusing Jagmeet Singh of doing by using that language?
No, I'm accusing
Pierre Poilievre
of doing that. Because
okay, so the whole claim of our democracy allows for a inquiry to happen. That's embedded in our legal system here in Canada. Inquiries, right? Like look at the Emergencies Act. It was deemed illegally invoked. They did an inquiry. They said, nope, everything was good. It checks out, legal, 100%. Fast forward a year and a little bit, turns out what the Supreme Court or some person with a hammer, a gavel, said, no, it actually turned out the Emergencies Act was illegally invoked. So public inquiry ipso facto, was absolutely useless. So I don't know why she would be bragging about that, but that's kind of the Liberal way. Speaking of way, let's take a look at May. Elizabeth May, to be exact, in what she has to say in response to this direct interview of Trudeau's mistress, Mélanie Joly. Here we go.
The question of how much interference in Canada's democracy is taking place due to hostile actions by foreign governments, and what to make of what is being reported in some quarters, but I don't think it is a contradiction, between what Mr. Singh thought when he read the report and what I thought when I read the report. I will just make it clear the only reason to raise this again is to emphasize how much I believe that leaders of the opposition parties and of Prime Minister and all members of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, all of whom have received top secret security clearance and who represent most of the parties in the House of Commons, as well as some senators from independent positions. I think we'll make progress when we can sit down together and discuss it together, such that if there are differences of interpretation, we can get into details and discuss them, which we can't do in news conferences, which we can't do on the floor of the House of Commons without risking trespassing into areas of intelligence that we must respect have to remain top secret. Reading that top secret report, I didn't share this, what the experience is you go into a very small room. Well, it doesn't have to be very small, but it is a secure location. You don't bring your staff, no staff allowed, no cell phones allowed, no electronic devices, no pen, no paper, no note-taking, and obviously you don't take the top secret document out of the room. So it's an exercise that requires some rigor and careful attention to detail, which is why I am concerned about the potential for back and forth between one person in one party saying one thing, another person in another party saying a different thing. We need to be very careful as people in political life that in handling allegations of foreign interference, we put Canada first always and recognize that those who'd like to undermine our democracy would take great pleasure in seeing us chase our tails and keep trying to find names and look for, use the word traitors loosely. I will not do that, but I do appreciate very much the clarification from Mr. Singh's office, which I don't think got as much attention as kind of what I think may have been a misinterpretation of his comments. But this is from a CBC story. A party spokesperson later said that Singh's comments should not be taken as confirming or denying that any parliamentarians cited in the report are currently serving. And that's where I think when you look at what each of us has said about the report, we haven't said different things. Our feeling of if I'm relieved and he's more upset, that's a subjective question. How was he feeling before he read the report? I was plenty alarmed before I got to read the full report. And the greater context that it provided and the information contained within it was really helpful to me. And I don't change anything I already said, so I won't repeat it. But I do think that it will be helpful for all of us as parliamentarians when, and I'd like to say when and not if, the leader of the official opposition seeks his top secret security clearance, reads the report. It's a rigorous process, as I said. You can't bring anything with you. You sit down. It took me 3.5 hours to read it through carefully twice to be able to be sure that what I was saying was correct and didn't in any way infringe on the intelligence operations of Canada's intelligence and security establishment. And I did verify what I was saying would be within those confines before speaking publicly. I, again, am going to be very cautious today, but I think it's important for Canadians to know that we can work together, that we can set partisanship aside, and I hope we can do so as soon as possible.
I really get the vibe that Elizabeth May is just somebody who's had a couple puffs early morning, or maybe in this case, which is a little bit more accurate, had a little bit of fermented grapes, and she's sitting in, on the porch of a moss-covered house somewhere on the west coast, Hippy Dippy, Vancouver Island, or one of the sub islands, and she's just on this like hippie rant. That was a whole lot of nothing. There's a lot of contradictions. In fact, treason has been mentioned by Mélanie Joly in the extended version of the interview that I started off this video playing, as with Jagmeet Singh, who, both of them have read this unredacted report that Elizabeth May is talking about right now. The only people that haven't said treason is Justin Trudeau, for obvious reasons. He doesn't want to be under the microscope even more. And I don't even know if Pierre Poilievre has said it. Maybe he has, but he's just shooting it into the air because he hasn't even read the report other than the publicly available redacted version. There are many, many reasons to believe that even professionals believe this, that we have very much treasonous MPs that are committing or complicit with foreign election interference. Even the mainstream media has said this. You've had this global news reporter, CTV, CBC, everybody's like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Sitting here and doing these press conferences saying, it's okay. No need to worry about it. Trees, after they're planted, once you plant the seed, it basically grows itself. Like, excuse me, what? That has nothing to do with treason. Hello, we want the names. Address the issue. We want the names. Elizabeth May does everything in her power not to do that. She has one shot right now, one shot to be actually relevant and do something good. But she can't because she's under NDA because she read this freaking report and has her lips tied. Maybe she's a part of the problem. Who knows? But let's continue listening to what she has to say.
In your remarks just now that you think sort of the people who are attempting foreign interference would love to see you chasing your... Isn't that what's happening? Aren't they actually succeeding in what they were trying to do?
I hope not. I hope that by returning to the question of, because the appearance was being created through the lack of detail, and I have to say I have nothing, I'm going to repeat it again, the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians have done an extraordinary job. They went through 33,000 pages of intelligence information and produced a report to which members of Parliament from the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, and independent senators could all agree. And they made it very clear that there's a real threat of foreign interference in our democracy, that MPs across all party lines are being targeted. And they made it very clear that there was, in the public version, they made it clear there's at least one example of someone who's no longer serving in Parliament who proactively engaged with foreign operatives. I think it's really important, and I think the press conference I gave last week helped Canadians feel relieved as well that there is not in the top secret security document an allegation or intelligence to suggest that currently sitting MPs have proactively betrayed their government in the sense, and their country, in the sense of the individual that's referenced on page 26 of what was already a public document. I hope that helps. I do urge my colleagues to be cautious in, I know Mr. Blanchet is going to be reviewing the document. I think it's important to, and this was confirmed as well by comments from the chair of the committee, David McGuinty, who, as I said, the committee's done a terrific job. And David McGuinty said words to the effect of, I think it will behoove us to stop looking for names of individual MPs and focus our attention and our attention and our work collaboratively together. And what David McGuinty described as having an adult conversation, I think that conversation has to happen in a secure location where we all have top secret security clearance and can discuss things with each other without a media lens. I think when we do that, we can continue the work that actually puts in place the kinds of protections we need. We acted quickly to pass Bill C-70. But since a lot of the vulnerabilities that are identified in this intelligence work of where do foreign governments see an opportunity in Canada to interfere in our democracy are in internal political party rules. And that's a question for all of us as leaders of federal political parties. Could we agree that we want to see our rules tightened up before the 2025 election? Those are like, political parties are basically like private clubs. Our legal status as unincorporated associations is not far off sporting clubs, or there are very few we're not a corporation in the sense that political parties can, for instance, contract. So we have chief agents. Anyway, not to dive too deeply into this, but it's our job as political parties to ensure that our internal political party rules are as rigorous as possible to avoid foreign interference.
On that issue, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Just none of the political parties seem very seized with that internal process when it comes to nominations and that kind of stuff. What does that say to you about how seriously they're taking foreign interference?
In order to create the opportunity for that adult conversation, I'm working very, very hard to do two things. One is not to reveal anything I've read in the top secret report, and the other is not to take any shots, cheap or
Well-deserved.
towards other party leaders. Because if we can create the space for an adult conversation, it would be best not to say, this tells me that they're, I'm not. I think that we all, I think, as increasingly, thanks to the work of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, I would say we are all more aware now, more seized with the threat of foreign interference than we were, certainly, than we were a year ago. And I think probably even more than we were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it seems to be increasingly getting worse. And it's not even the interference that's making it worse. It's the contradictions within our own government, the lack of attention to detail, the lack of communication, the lack of transparency, and the lack of taking this serious. I mean, for crying out loud, Justin Trudeau's known about this for years, and it's only come to light now because the group that he's either founded or helped come to fruition, which is NSICOP, because Justin Trudeau claims that Stephen Harper and the Conservatives blocked NSICOP from ever happening, and he's like, hey, I founded NSICOP. Justin Trudeau recently came out and said that some of the reports aren't even accurate. So I don't get how he can prop up organizations that he thinks are going to work in his favor. And when they don't work in his favor, he says, no, red card, foul. I don't accept that. That's not real. That's not true. It doesn't make any sense. He's just gaslighting us to our faces. And does he think we're stupid? Does he honestly think we're stupid? Because I'll be honest, the more I get gaslit, the dumber I kind of feel sometimes. So it might be working in his favor for me because it really starts messing with my head, which, by the way, gaslighting is technically illegal in Canada. So I don't know what 40 plus million counts of gaslighting would do, but I think that he should be locked up forever for the crimes he's committed for gaslighting alone using a national platform. But I do get my confirmation bias. I do feel a little bit more sane when I make these videos and I see down in the comment section, Jasper, you're not crazy. Jasper, we feel like that too, Jasper. That's something that I can relate to because it feels crazy. And I just want to pass the question off to you before I hit play again. How do you feel about this? Are you feeling like something's wrong? Because I have a really horrible feeling that there's just all this weird trickery and deception happening, these like smoke and mirrors. And I don't trust what's going on right now. And the only person that's really been transparent about things, up until now at least, is Pierre Poilievre. And he's the only one that hasn't seen, other than the separatist leader, the Bloc, they're the only ones that haven't seen the report. So do they really know that it's that bad? And once they see it, they literally can't say anything? Because that's what Elizabeth May is stuck doing. She's chasing her own tail. Well, it's kind of bad. We should be worried about it. But there's not really much reason to believe that we should be that worried about it. We should all get together and talk. But no one's committed treason. It's kind of hypocritical because they're all contradicting one another. Anyways, let's continue the video.
Does that work with political parties have to happen from the parties themselves, or is that something that should be something that all parties have to do through sort of the work of Parliament?
Look, the Elections Act has already beefed up things quite a lot. In 2006, when I ran for leader of the Green Party, it was the first leadership contest that had any requirements from the Elections Act to report political donations. Put it the other way, the last leadership race where nobody knew who donated to make sure that the Conservative candidate who won would be successful was the time Stephen Harper was elected leader of the party that he led at that time, which was not yet called the Conservative Party. We know from this report, the public version, that leadership contests are another place of real vulnerability. We know that there was foreign interference in the leadership, the most recent Conservative Party leadership race, and the one before that.
To what extent, though, did foreign interference help prop up the leaders to get into their position? Or was it from a saboteur perspective where they tried to block said leaders from becoming leaders of the Conservative Party or the opposition? Like, they're not describing anything, and it's insane. And people are accusing Pierre of, being treasonous on X. They're saying, oh, that's why he doesn't want to see the report, because he's going to, be shamed into seeing the inside information that they have about him and his, him being complicit with foreign interference. And I think that's just a bunch of crap. I think that Pierre is without a doubt the most popular politician in Canada. I mean, even when you take all of Justin Trudeau's hatred, and there's a lot of it, and he's world renowned, right, in a negative spotlight for what he's done to Canadians, for what he's going around the world doing and saying about other countries. I still think that Pierre is way more popular here in Canada. If there was an election and you had to choose yes Pierre or yes or no Trudeau, you would get more yes Pierres than you would no Trudeau. So I don't know that Pierre, it was a close call for Pierre to get elected as Conservative Party. But if there was ever foreign interference with the Conservative elections, then yeah, but we should know about it, but why haven't they disclosed anything? That's what I'm trying to get to, is they keep saying Pierre is this and Pierre is that, and there was election interference with the Conservatives. Okay, but what? What was the election interference? What was the foreign interference? Give us a hint. Give us a breadcrumb. The fact that they can never do that just shows that I think they're just flinging mud at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Elections Act can get at a lot of it, but we can move more quickly. And certainly in a party, well, look what happened with Bill C-70. When you get parties agreeing, this is important, we need to move quickly, legislation can be adopted. And I have to say, I think we moved a bit too quickly on C-70, because it would have been, I think, good for a number of reasons to have had an opportunity to study it in committee. But when we move together, we can move quickly in Parliament. And when we are committed to hyper-partisanship and obstruction, things don't move at all. So yes, I think, yes, parties have responsibility. Yes, Parliament as a whole could pass amendments to the Elections Act that says all party nomination proceedings must ensure that anyone voting in a nomination contest is a citizen of Canada and lives in the electoral district for which the nomination is taking place. But again, talking together will move faster than still being in opposite corners sparring.
Ms. May, just on the difference between Mr. Singh and yourselves' interpretation of this, I know you talked about the former MP on page 26 of the report, but I want to read you something that he said, and I want your view, because you've read the unredacted report. This is a quote from him. There are a number of MPs who have knowingly provided help to foreign governments, some to the detriment of Canada and Canadians. Do you agree with that statement based on what you have read?
As long as one accepts the correction or clarification from his office that he's speaking of past and not current, then both of our interpretations can stand together without being contradictions.
So the issue with his remarks, I'm just trying to find where the daylight is here. Is it just on the trader comment? Like, what are your specific differences between that?
What you just read as an interpretation is not something with which I would disagree, as long as we're not solely focused on current MPs.
Go ahead, please.
And the other part of it is, as I said in my first statement on this matter, and just to go back to my exact words, there's no question that beyond the question of proactive outreach to a foreign government, certain, and I described it initially as fewer than a handful, of current members of Parliament have allowed themselves, and again, going back to the original comments from CSIS, semi-wittingly, or wittingly, allowed themselves to become compromised. I said at the time, they have been beneficiaries of foreign governments interfering in nomination contests. I stand by that, and Mr. Singh, I think, is not saying something entirely contradictory, although he's more willing to use words about unethical or potentially criminal. I don't think those words apply. But again, differences between our views of how we react, how we interpret, and what is in the unredacted full report are really very, very small indeed.
It's extremely annoying, it's disingenuous, and it's almost fraudulent how much the Green Party leader, Elizabeth May, is going around saying it's something that's severe, potentially that's happening, yet we're not able to talk about what it is, but it's not enough for us to be super concerned, yet we need to have an emergency party leader gathering. It's just contradictions after contradictions, and people are fed up. And when we eventually, I'm under the firm impression that this will either be leaked or they will be forced socially, with all the pressure that's happening from the mainstream media, from social media, everything, to release the names and release this type of information. What security breach is there possibly going to be by letting the public know, especially towards an opposition party like the Conservatives? If the Conservatives were really complicit in foreign interference and they weren't victims of it, but they were actually complicit in it, you would think that Trudeau would use that and weaponize that and say, well, this is why we can't have a Conservative government. This is why you have to vote Liberal, because these people are corrupt. No one has said that. No one can say that, because I'm under the firm impression that that's not true. If it was there, you can bet your ass they would be talking about it, especially if it was confidential information, because that means that only they know it to be true and we can't fact check it. Yet it has not happened. So I want to pass the question off to you guys. How do you feel about this? What are your thoughts? Are the Conservatives really complicit with treason or foreign interference? Let me know down below. That's where we're going to end the video. On your way out, I would like to encourage you guys to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.